for the crew to break the equations not bound to. In a world that walks the line, there's a rare few who think outside the box together for the crew to break the equations not bound to any rule, exposing to the world the universe's own view. It takes the talent of the craftsman, it takes the mind of the fool to make the vision realize energy and matter in a duel. To a break, to a duel.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nathan, otherwise known as Old Man Builds, and we have Joe here with us. Welcome back, Joe.
Hey there. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a fun couple of weeks. I'll tell you that much.
Nice. Well, I'm glad you're back, man.
Yeah.
So, we got an exciting show today, man. We're going to be talking about some crystals and healing and stuff like that, and it's going to be awesome. I have a lot of technical information, but there's a lot of information out there on exactly how they work and things like that. So I just wanted to show this real quick so we can start off on the right foot. You see that, Joe?
Yep, right. I can see that.
Okay. So rose quartz, it says its practical use is meditation wear as an amulet. Okay. A lot of these say meditation. Let's see. It says quartz promotes love and inner peace. And then, let's see. Black tourmaline. Yeah, I should have you read these, Joe.
Black tourmaline. Yep.
Yeah. Promotion against negative energies. Let's see. Clear quartz, energy amplification and mental clarity. And there's a whole list of them here. So I guess our aspect to this comes down to, is there something going on here in the process that maybe people do not understand that actually might give them a better understanding of why these things feel like they're doing something?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's one of the most hidden or unknown type of piece of like information that's out there, because if you look, you don't have to go far to find people that will praise the power and energy and benefits of different types of crystals and stuff like that, and they'll go into some very vague reasons as to why that is. There's very little science that's generally discussed in the metaphysical end of things when it comes to crystals. But when you actually look at the science that it's associated with, as far as like the crystal structures, how they form, the materials and the different material attributes, it starts to actually make a lot more sense, especially when you're looking at different quartz derivatives. Now, like rose quartz, for instance, rose quartz realistically is the same crystal structure as quartz, but what gives it its coloration is simply different impurities that are present during the time of the crystal formation. And a lot of times these impurities, they're not present necessarily as what you might consider like an inclusion, which would be an actual foreign body, more or less, in the quartz structure or the crystal structure itself. Sometimes it's just ionization of those different elements in the vicinity of the brine solutions in which they're formed that actually infuse into the brine solution itself. So you're not actually talking about like when you're looking at something like rose quartz, it may be like an iron impurity. Hematite, the same thing, that's an iron impurity in quartz. Again, you might not be looking at detectable amounts necessarily of iron in there on like a large scale, rather the ions that are actually infused into the crystalline structure itself, which is super fascinating. So that actually changes it. The crystal structure remains the same, but these ions actually get stuck within the crystal structure, which could obviously change its attributes when you're talking about it from like a material science or metaphysical perspective.
So from what I understand, they're negative ions that they're trapping inside the crystal itself.
Yeah, that's right. And certain changes that are made in quartz, sometimes things are the same and then can change depending on the environmental factors. So like a good example of that would be like citrine, which is it's a yellowish gold quartz. It's very beautiful. And citrine, when it's exposed to ionizing radiation, no matter what the element, it actually will turn purple, and that's what we consider to be amethyst. So citrine and amethyst are chemically the same thing, except one's been irradiated and one has not.
They actually have crystal that's half orange and half purple at the same time. And
Yeah,
they
that's
don't,
citrine amethyst usually. And most of the time, I mean, although that could form naturally that way, most of the time that's a piece of citrine that they expose partially to radiation, like in a lab or in a gem cutting setting, like as a treatment.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually have an answer for you on why it actually feels like it's doing something. So let me share my screen here, and I'm going to read this. It says, quartz has a crystal structure compound that's continuous network of silicon and oxygen tetrahedra, SiO4, where each oxygen atom is shared between the tetrahedra, resulting in overall chemical of SiO2. So, all that, big mouthful, right? What is it basically trying to tell us? There's silicon in it, there's oxygen in it, and it has this very specific shape. So, that shape will become important later, but I want to get to why it actually has energy to it. So let me pull this. It's right here. So we see that we have a multimeter connected. It's in millivolts, but as soon as you put water to quartz, this is what you get. You have a little bit of actual energy coming right out of the quartz.
Well, that makes sense because, less than a chemical reaction, that's actually a mechanical reaction to do with the piezoelectric effects or piezoelectric effects of the quartz itself. The pressure differential from atmosphere to water, even when it's not running, is enough to induce a detectable amount of current.
Right. So what they actually are feeling, it may be that they think they're feeling it, or it could just be the fact that they're sensitive to it, like you were with the rock, that you can actually feel the energy coming out of it.
Well, that's true. And one thing that makes quartz particularly special is that it could receive energies as easily as it can give energies back. So when you're dealing with the self and your own body and spiritual energies and so on, that could be transferred through the quartz, and through the mechanical stress that would be induced through that transfer actually create a further effect within the quartz mechanically, and actually amplify that signal and actually give that signal out as well.
That's correct. So I wanted to show you something else. So we know that it has a little bit of energy to it, right? Okay. Right here, this right here is granite. So as you can see as well, it's also conductive when in water. So again, it shouldn't be any surprise. It's still quartz, right? So it's telling us something very important here. We're getting an electrical signal only when water is present with the quartz, which means it's the conduit to transfer energy between the quartz and actual energy.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it just feels almost inappropriate not to make the very obvious connection as to this and all the experimentation that you've been showing on the channel recently, and how that also directly ties into what I just said about the energy transfer through the quartz, the amplification and projection of that energy out of the quartz. Water presence, the mineral composition, and then the fact that like with that experiment where you touch the mud, pile, and the current got redirected to your body as opposed to the bulb. It's the same thing with the quartz.
Yes, very much the same thing. And that's kind of where I'm going here with it. But I wanted just to give some more information out there. So we know that we get regular quartz, we can get the energy out of it with water. We see that it's in granite where it's pressurized. And in that, we can actually add water, and the granite sucks up the water into it. But there's more here. This is why it's one of my favorite things. So let me see if I can get this all the way to the back, and I'll show you why. So this right here is the structure of quartz. We can see the silicon, we can see the oxygen, and then how it's built. But we can also see the tetrahedron. So now we see the shape that it's building with those molecules, right? So now we go into here, and here's the actual structure of it. And you'll notice the same shape, but there's another shape that takes place here. So when we start to look at how we get to doing this, the shape predicts what you're going to get when you want to put it in harmonic resonance. So if you look at it, yeah, there's a tetrahedron in the center, but there's also two triangles right there. So when you want to put this out in wire configuration and you want to get a hold of the quartz, you're going to put it just like this. Now, it's also going to create cool effects beyond that. So here's the structure right here. This is another look at it, and it forms three-sided triangles. That becomes important because the tetrahedron is what it shapes, and then it turns into a Merkaba when you actually put them together. This we saw with the Merkaba machine. When he puts frequency into it, this is the exact shape he was getting. So we look at it, you can see the two easy things in 2D versus what it looks like in 3D. And here's the really cool concept that goes with this. This right here is a wire formation that I put together in order to understand this. And you can see the exact crystal structure of of quartz in this. So it's telling you something right here. We are learning this. You can see the male and female is in the triangle. We can see this all over the place in cathedrals. We can see the structure when you change it. Now, all this information is giving you the magnetic frequency. It's giving you the hertz. It's giving you everything that you want. What I found was really cool, Joe, is they knew it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, lost knowledge is such a real thing, and I think that it's all kind of exiting that fringe realm at this point. I think that there's enough findings that and then the science is finally catching up with it to the point where there's only so much coincidence that you could possibly have. And I think that's first of all, that's an incredible work of art in the first place, and I know that that's maybe a silly thing to dwell on given the topic, but whenever you're looking at technology, advancement, people's thinking, to be able to get into the minds of what people might have known back then, seeing the quality and craftsmanship of the work and the thought process that goes into it and the intricacies and everything is, it's a supporting fact and exemplifies the fact that they knew exactly what was going on. This isn't stuff that fell out of the sky exactly, or maybe it did, right? Who knows?
Well, I find it very interesting because now it goes back to why they have such a belief in this, and it's taught in religion. When you come up and all the crystals and everything, all the structures, they show it in their things like this when they put all the things in there, and it's in their mandalas. It's so interesting. All of it ties in together, and it all has to do with the very structure of quartz itself, because quartz is the most abundant, crystalline structure on the entire earth.
Yeah, that and feldspar, which is the other constituent material of, granite and all granitic materials. And I mean, it makes sense. They're very similar in nature, but one is piezoelectric and the other isn't, which I think is a fascinating thing to think about too, is how, just the small chemical difference and small structural difference could so vastly change the, physical capabilities and effect of the crystal structure, even when it's formed literally side by side under the same exact conditions. It's really wild to think that, and that just goes to show how significant certain geometries are. Where one small change ruins the whole system.
Yes. So you always hear Nikola Tesla, or we think he made the comment, it's in 3, 6, and 9. And here's a perfect example of it. He was dealing with quartz, and he said it was alive. Well, this right here is very simple. There's the quartz structure. There's the 3, 6, and 9. That's exactly how you would build it. He already knew. He was way ahead of us. He already knew what he was going to do. So when you did the experiments on it and you put the rod in the ground and you found out that it's electrically conductive to quartz and that it can impart frequency, then you understand that when he said 3, 6, and 9, he was directly talking about when you put your Tesla coil on the ground and it comes into contact with quartz, it makes a very, very special thing there. And it's something that's going to go to your ley lines on the earth. It's going to go everywhere because the mineral quartz is everywhere.
Well, there's a bit of a common, misnomer, I suppose, out there where, like, the electric effect of quartz or the energy effect of quartz is thought to be electrical, but it's so much more than that. First off, the mechanical response on the quartz for the piezoelectric effect in the first place is the fact that any sort of mechanical stress on it whatsoever causes oscillation. Oscillation is vibration. Vibration creates the frequency. It's the frequency buildup and constructive interference of the frequency buildup that leads to what the observable would be electric. But we also know that along with the electrical component or the earth energy component of it is cold light, which
Yes.
Triboluminescence is a phenomena that directly correlates and runs in line with these other side of the coin effects that all the coil systems and everything like that have been generating.
Yeah, he specifically said, what was it? Think of in the order of energy, frequency, and vibration. He was directly talking about quartz. He knew exactly how this whole universe was built based on this. He found it a long time ago. When he studied the pyramids, he found what he was looking for. So everything in this, pretty much, it's going to keep proving it.
Yep. Well, interestingly enough, too, just to build on how the geometry matters so much, when they were developing radio technology back in the turn of the last century, and they started using quartz to be able to dial into certain frequencies, they had to slice the quartz crystal. They had to be able to mark the grain structure, so to speak, the direction of the atomic layout of the quartz to be able to determine the direction of energy propagation, and then slice the quartz on specific axes of that plane in order to achieve different frequencies of oscillation that would allow you to tune into certain specific frequencies. So just by manipulating that pattern by slicing on an axis is enough to change the observable input output of the crystalline structure itself, which is incredible.
So one thing I wanted to share with you is when you start putting this structure together of quartz, look on the ground in the shadow. It's right there telling you exactly what the mandala is. It's not lying to you. It's telling you the exact frequencies you need, the exact shape of wiring you need, everything in order to get it. I love this picture, by the way. This is incredible that it does that. It's so odd.
Bringing mandalas from 2D to 3D and then doing the shadow to bring it from 3D to 2D is mind-blowing.
Yes.
But where it gets really incredible is when you realize that the mandalas are realistically just part of a greater fractal when you then step up into the higher dimension.
Mm-hmm. Well, it also makes a lot of sense when Gerald started telling you about his coil and what it's doing, and then you see something like this and you understand that he uses sacred geometry in order to build it. Now I think we can connect the dots in our own minds of what he's saying about it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is one of the funnest ones. So we can only mention part of it, but this one thing tells you all you need to know about what's really going on here. It tells you about the frequency, the vibration. Did the ancient cultures know it? What part is it going to play in the future when we're able to talk about it? It's an incredible thing, to know that all of it is controlled by these simple things that Tesla told us.
Yeah, for sure. And especially with the cymatics. And, it's one of those incredible things that you realize that when you could get a standing waveform under certain conditions, and then look under a microscope and at a slice of a cell structure, and you realize that those standing waveforms that are most stable are exactly what you're looking at under the microscope, you realize that you've made a macro representation of that creation, which is incredible to think. It's
like a slice in time, isn't it?
It really is. Well, a slice of development, yeah. And then it makes you think, well, what's the similarity that causes or what's the common denominator rather that causes these shapes to be the same? And the common denominator is almost always going to be some type of resonant frequency.
That's correct. So I just want to show this slide right here. In every single one of them that you look at, these are what's in crystals. So when you make this geometry shape, it's actually the shape of the crystal when it comes out and it's built. So in the middle there, you can see it says air, but that's built exactly like a diamond. And then you look at the tetrahedron, we already know that's quartz. Okay, there's other ones like hexahedron. That is, how do I say this? I forgot the name of it, but it's another form of crystal. Every single one of them, and every single one of them has a wire form, and then it also has the understanding of the crystal. And we also know that every single one of these will activate with water. So when you want to have that little bit of energy in there in the crystal, it's showing that it's proving out in science that it's actually there. Our technology, or what I'm working on, it actually proves that we can communicate with it now. If we put the right frequency in there, we're going to get the right answer. So that's all we have to do is impart frequency into the water. Now, water itself will actually take on that frequency and it'll hold it inside the water. And that's part of what I'm showing as well. When I show you that I could put the light bulb next to the glass with the water in it and it stays on, it's imparting that frequency onto that water and it's making a template in there.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I love that picture. And one thing I'm kind of looking at on it too is how the tetrahedra, the octahedra, and the I never know how to say that one. The blue one, right?
The blue one. Yeah.
Right. Their 3D structure is all only able to be comprised of triangles. Right. So there's a certain level of analogous relationship between the three of them. And it's like, well, okay, explain. Well, look, it's fire and air. When you have fire and air, and you're oxidizing something with hydrogen present, your outcome is water. So there's an inherent relationship between them, which is right present in their structure.
So if we apply that to the ley lines now, we can start to see how the Earth's being built. And we can start to understand the harmonics of the Earth a lot better just by understanding that simple point. When each thing works upon another and how they go together.
Yeah.
So these are the structures right here of the different ones of quartz.
Nice. Good old rhombic structures.
Yes. Sorry, I can go back to that one if you want.
Whatever.
So I wanted to show this. And this has to do with the sacred geometry, but it also has to do with what you may not understand is there. We see on the bottom left-hand corner all the things we've been talking about, right? But why is the flower of life in there? So what you have to understand when you get to something like quartz, there's a magnetic quality to everything. It's an energy flow. That's what that is. The flower of life is a simple energy flow when all of this starts to come together.
Yeah, it becomes analogous to squaring the circle. And to square the circle, you need the triangle, and the triangle is present in those three things. You look at the egg of life, you look at the flower of life, you look at the seed of life, and what you really realize is that that's a representation of cell division and creation.
Yes.
In itself. That's exactly how cells divide, and that's how little balls of potential turn into structure of manifest life. It's quite an amazing process, and the fact that it's all tied up together in these very, very esoteric designs that most people just look at, maybe they buy it on a tapestry at like a, a fair or something, and they hang it on their wall and light one up, and it's like, yeah, man, it's cool or whatever. But like, there's much more to it.
Yeah, there's a ton more to it. So here, you can see right here in this piece of quartz, there's the flower of life is right in there. It's right there in that center. It also looks like the magnetic field when you pull it up. It's a pretty interesting thought that it's right in front of our face, and we just haven't
I'm going to
connected the
interject
dots.
on that. I mean, that's a faceted piece of lapidary, but the way that they facet these stones is, and for what it's worth, there's a reason that Orthodox Jews are the most prevalent in the gemstone cutting, trading community and so on. It's because they take their sacred geometry straight from the Kabbalah. It's all Kabbalistic ritual. So, I mean, that's not a natural, like, I mean, who am I to say definitively, but that to me, as somebody who cuts stones every so often,
And you're saying they cut that into it?
that's a cut stone. Yeah. It's a beautifully cut stone. It's a beautifully cut stone, but that looks like a piece of citrine. Or, looks like a piece of citrine.
All right. So now we get into this. This right here, it describes the shape, but it also is telling you something else. We're going to get into a musical scale, and we're going to get into octaves and harmonics. So I always say when you deal with quartz, it's more than just one avenue on one side. One side we know is magnetics. The other side we know is frequency. But did you know there's harmonics involved in it? Or the octave level? Just every little part of fractal geometry is sitting right there in it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, geometry is directly related to music, and music is directly related to octaves, and music is a mathematical equation in the first place. It's really just it's one of the finest things out there. In fact, the book that I have, Victor had mentioned it, and I picked it up. Quadrivium. This book is the 4 classical liberal arts of number, geometry, music, and cosmology. So it connects all of those things in this book, and it's fantastic. Highly recommend it.
Very cool. So here's the musical scale and how you figure it out right here. The only point I want to make about this real quick is when you look at it and you figure out how to do resonance at a higher frequency and then bring it back to the regular frequency you want to get to in the hertz level, and you're in the kilohertz level, it's a division. And all you have to do is divide back by 2, by 3, and you're going to get the correct frequency that you were trying to be in. Now, does that translate to the correct octave, though? So you have to make sure that you're in the right frequency, but you also have to be in the correct octave in order to get it right.
Yeah, being out of octave definitely has effects. I think, and I could be wrong, so chat or Nathan, correct me if I am. But my understanding was that if you're out of octave for a desired effect that you're looking to achieve, that it can be overcome, but it has to be overcome by amplification. So you need a lot more out of octave, but as long as it's in the right key.
Oh, you're going to need a ton more. I could tell you that from experiments. It will take a ton more to put it in the correct energy level, because it's like it's accepting the energy at that octave. And when it's not at that octave, it's like it has the doors like 3/4 of the way shut. And it's just not letting it in all that well. It's still letting a little in, but it's not anywhere close to where it should be. So, by the way, I was asked if I could make these available. I have probably 400 or 500 slides of the sacred geometry. I just don't know where to put them exactly to make them available. But as soon as I find out, I will and let everybody know. But
yeah, we could talk about getting something together off stream, and then present that in the future. We could all work together and get something like that together.
Yeah, I'm going to make a video about all this and put it together in a real clear and understandable way so everybody has it and you'll be able to screenshot it for sure. So, yeah, we talk about the octave and the harmonics, and there it is, by the way, Joe. The wire formation, they already showed it to us.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it doesn't get much easier than this. I mean, they're just giving you the answers right here. Once you understood the premise of what you're doing, you just have to look at what they put down in all these stones. They gave you the answer.
Yeah, it's this particular image is really, really striking in the sense that it directly looks like just about every one of the most credible unified theories being put out there on the fringe right now, which again seems to be getting more and more and more attention on the regular. This looks very similar to a plasmoid unification model as well, and just the way that it's structured. So, let that speak volumes. This stuff doesn't come from nowhere, and for what it's worth, it's lost knowledge, and even if you're not the first one to find it, rediscovering it at this point is just as important.
Well, it's about timing, isn't it?
I'd say.
We finally have a way to build it. We have a way to communicate it. We have the understanding of what we're looking for in there. We understand it has absolutely everything to do with the ether in it. And as soon as we do this and we get out of our own ways, we're going to have it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's getting close. I've been very, very impressed with what I've been seeing come out of you and Gerald and Ben and your guest. Everybody's making huge leaps, in that regard, and it's really coming to life. And I think that based on my external presence outside of this channel, just more of a observer, I definitely people are catching on, watching. It really seems like anytime something is mentioned, kind of on this channel, all of a sudden it starts to gain steam elsewhere.
You notice that, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Gerald. How's it going? Joe's in the chat right there.
Oh, yeah. I see him there. Very cool.
I figured he'd enjoy this since it has everything to do with his work. So, yeah. So I wanted to show you that because I was just mind blowing when I saw that, because it's like they already knew. And when you look at it, you can clearly see the triangle right here. And you could see it several times everywhere. And it's not in the same spot. They keep moving it by one in order to build that triangle.
Now, what's fascinating about that to me, and just sort of what that looks like, and then bringing it back to the crystal line of things, pun intended, really, really cruddy dad joke, is it reminds me of how sapphire is formed. Sapphire is tetrahedral? It's 6-pointed.
Okay, I think so.
Yeah.
They'll tell us if we're wrong.
But the way that the way that it builds is it builds in triangles that rotate around an axis. And what it does is it actually gives the outside of the sapphire like ridges, because again, it's not just stacking itself like a plate, one layer on top of the next. It's actually a triangular rotational helical formation that builds that way. And that's exactly sort of what that looks like, is like you could pick out every single triangle in that and see it as it rotates about in its structure. And there's not a lot of discussion a lot of times in the scientific realm of things as to the potential significance of sapphire, so it becomes very hard to get information on that. Most of its scientific research and stuff like that that's been done has been more on the material science end of things, because of its hardness and its potential clarity and its manipulation, and needs to grow in a lab and things of that nature. It becomes a very useful material. In fact, if you have an iPhone or a high-end Android, you have a huge piece of sapphire that you sit there and probably touch for 6 hours a day, because that's what they make it out of.
If I'm not mistaken, Bedini made sapphires by transmutation. So he's able to take one element and transmutate it to another, which should also tell you something that's going on with the earth, that you're getting transmutation when you create the ether.
Yeah. I mean, for what it's worth, though, like sapphire isn't, I'm not saying that it's not transmutable or you can't transmutate something into it, but because it's non-elemental and its elemental constituents are super basic and common, I don't really see the necessity of that unless if it's a byproduct of some other process. Because it's not like gold, where if you can turn something into gold, gold is an element and gold is valuable, so cool, you have gold. But with sapphire, realistically, it's one of the most simple crystal formations out there, very similar to quartz in the sense that quartz is silicon dioxide. You have sapphire, which is just aluminum oxide. That's all it is.
Well, I don't think it's so much that you want to create it in order to get wealth or anything like that. It's the fact that it was transmutated in order to create it. That there was some kind of process that went on in the earth in order to form that crystal. That's the whole goal here. It doesn't matter to me about the money.
No, and I'm not talking about it from a money perspective as much as I guess the fact that it's like aluminum oxide, because it's not just a straight element, and it's an oxide mineral. I'm just trying to put my mind around that in terms of transmutation. I suppose anything could transmute into whatever, and it could be a compound element, but because it's an oxide, that's where I think I'm disconnected, for what it's worth.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is you don't need that many elements in the planet to start, because you're going to transmutate everything. So that's kind of where I'm going with it here. Everybody looks at the form of it now and they say, oh, quartz. Well, if we go to another planet, we're going to find quartz. Well, it was transmutated in order to become quartz. There's a process that goes on there in order to form it. And it goes to exactly how we look at this. So if we look at it the right way and we can reverse just a little bit, now we can build the right structure to create the primary part of this, not the part that comes afterward. Because now we can look at what structures do we need to form the original element in order to transmutate it to something else. Because then we can have whatever we want. It's the alchemist's dream.
Yeah. No, that of course that makes sense. Yeah, it's interesting because I'm kind of thinking about it, and it's not like I have huge exposure or done all this research, but I feel like a lot of these types of crystalline structures, they seem to be, I'm not saying exclusive to Earth, but abundant. Abundant in a way that I don't know how abundant they are on other planets. If you look at things like moon rock, pieces of asteroid, and pieces of all this different stuff, you don't really necessarily see this type of material all that often I don't know what the constituents are of other, like, like the moon, for instance. I know that they pull different olivines and stuff commonly out of asteroids, which is a crystal, along with crystal formed iron, which is like when you look at a meteorite and you cut it open and it's got like a gnarly grain pattern to it and stuff. It's because it's crystalline form. So I guess it does happen other places, but I just haven't. I wonder if the abundance is on our planet versus other places, which could be a whole nother layer to this conversation.
Well, if we looked at everything as it was a hydrogen atom and then what it developed into, it might tell us what the universe is.
Yeah.
There might be a greater understanding to all of it if we find the base element that everything was created out of. And that's what the Russell scale was telling us. Everything was created out of a hydrogen atom, and how it split up and how it combined and how the elements formed different elements. It really tells you what you need to know. So
yeah,
I wanted to show this. This is the plate of the Ark of the Covenant. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This right here is significant because we're getting into the territory where we're able to now get the energy imparted onto the quartz, and we're able to get the frequency onto the quartz. So once I'm able to put the octave into it that I want, once I'm able to put all the other parts to it, the frequency, the octave, the magnetics, once I get it in all those things, along with the correct octave, now I want to light these up. That's the goal. I don't want to light up light bulbs. This is what I want to light up. There's a very specific reason why. It's only in the correct combination when you get it right, and you can understand the actual frequency and octave based on the wiring configuration you have. Do you ever get this thing to work right? So you want to light it up, you want to see what you're in. It's going to take a lot more than just a single frequency to get you there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm familiar with the plate, and I know that there had been a lot of discussion about what all of the crystals were that were in the plate, because it was kind of lost to time and left only to description. And obviously there could be a lot of overlying factors, in that. But I'd love to see, trust me, if you ever replicate anything like this for any purpose, including experimentation, I want to be the first to see it.
Well, it's just it's a combination lock. And I'm telling you right now, the first thing you do is you go look at the structure of the quartz, and you start to see exactly which pattern you want. It tells you right there. Quartz is a triangle, goes into a double triangle, goes into the Merkaba. We can now put a frequency to that, because now we can create it. We can put a harmonic to it. What if unlocking all of this is just putting each part in its right place and seeing the pattern the way it should be seen? Not one piece individually, but multiple pieces. If we knew the correct combination for those multiple pieces, it's only a matter of time before we put it all together. And it's telling us, it's crying out for us to know it. And all of these things that are coming through history are telling us the same thing. We're getting the information passed down to it. And I just think it's so interesting that nobody's looked at it that way. They haven't looked at, there's more than one thing that has to go in here to create this. And once they figure that out, this whole world is ours to manipulate. We just moved our whole entire world from what is a class 1 to a class 2 or 3, because now we can not only manipulate our world, we're going to be able to manipulate our solar system at some point.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to say that if that plate was energized, so to speak, and each one of those stones was throwing off their own frequency and such, what that interference might ultimately become. it could be something that we are not even considering.
Yeah, well, it could be that Tesla was 100% right when he said that quartz was alive. It's because the Earth is alive.
Yeah.
It's living, it's breathing, it's doing everything that we would do. We just don't recognize it because we don't recognize the energy structure it was built on. And once we do, we'll start to see it. And then we can harmonize with our planet instead of being against it.
Yeah, I mean, for certain. I mean, if you eliminate the human element from the perspective of what I'm about to say, it becomes like a lot more clear that everything on Earth is really just working with itself to maintain the life that is Earth. And, Earth gives life
Oh,
to it all and vice versa.
it just hit me. Hold on. Read that comment and look again.
What I am suggesting is a 12D understanding of unification of light, time, and life as one. 11 dimensions and God.
You also have how many layers would be in the correct coil in order to create this.
Yeah, 12.
You have every single structure that you need in those elements right there. What is the structure of every one of them? How many layers do you have to put into it? Now, do you know the secret to winding it? There's one guy I know that does, and he's the guy that made the comment. Gerald knows exactly how to wind it. There's only one way to get this information, man. The big man upstairs working overtime because that's not natural to know all that.
Yeah, trying to figure this stuff out sometimes and like cracking the code and getting like little bits from above and all this stuff. Like, I'll tell you though, it does sometimes feel like national treasure.
Yeah,
It feels like national treasure. Like the hot dog's on a bun, so the mustard is in the cabinet. So that means that the Declaration of Independence is, in our bra.
yeah.
Like, oh, okay. But I figured it out, didn't I? I
Well,
mean,
that's
he definitely has that higher insight.
yes, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, it gets really bad because, like Gerald says, a series of aha moments. There's a lot more. If you saw every photo that I have in there for this, you'd understand why I understand it the way I do. And it took a lot of finding to get everything. But you could see the wire structure in it. You could see every single part in it, and you could see it in every layer that I could see so far in that coil. What was really fascinating to me is when we came across the quartz structure and it started putting out its own energy, right? And it's a little bit, it's not much, but it also goes if you're sensitive to energy at all when it comes around you, like I'm not super sensitive to energy, but like you are, right? So if you had a piece of quartz in some water, it would probably, have an effect on you right away.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just like even in my move, for instance, I had like different rock specimens and stuff that I found over the years or whatever, and I kind of had them decorating all around or whatever, right? As soon as I boxed them up and didn't unpack them right away, like, I noticed a little bit of an inherent difference just based off of that alone. And frankly, I can't even say that all of it was negative. Some of it was like kind of, it felt light and airy a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of goes to show, all right, well, this isn't tread lightly, but I'm just trying to think of the best way to say it. It's sort of like that video that I showed you the other day with the activation of the crystal and how crystal has memory. So I shared a video with Nathan where they were activating different crystal objects. And the way that they were doing it was with a Tesla coil. and with a large Vogel quartz crystal that was wrapped in a copper wire. And then they would take the item that they were trying to activate, which in that case was like, I think it was jade, and it was like jade coasters or something, and jade's crystal. So, that works. And they basically turn on the Tesla coil, which the lady was funny. She turns it on with a piece of wood.
That cracks me up.
I don't know about this, whatever. She turns on the Tesla coil, and the Tesla coil's charging up the quartz. It's gaining capacitance. It's coming into resonance with the quartz and the coil that they have around it, and then it's putting out a field. And in that field is the activation of the item that they're putting next to it. And the point of the quartz and in proximity to the item is that the quartz is, for lack of a better way of putting it, I suppose, it's like rectifying the energy from the Tesla coil, and then it's discharging it and creating the field in resonance with itself.
Well,
so
I think they were missing the point in the video, though, and they probably just don't know it. They're connecting the hot side of the Tesla coil to it. That's not the side that's going to activate that crystal. Like, what they needed was some water, and they needed the cold side. They needed that rod down the center. It would have changed the entire thing. It would have actually manipulated that crystal into showing what's actually in the memory of it or imparting new memory on it. So I would say that they had the right part.
By the way, I do.
Yeah, they had the right parts. They just didn't have it in the right configuration to get it right. But they had all the right parts.
It's got to be the earth energy, which is why the old ways of imparting energies into crystals and so on was to bury them in the ground, was to some of them need water attention, but burying them in the ground. Also, bringing them back into resonance with tuned crystal sounds like singing bowls and things of that nature. That's the other side. That's the cold side. That's the cold earth energy, to bring it into that natural way. But they were trying to manipulate it in that way, which I found fascinating. I mean, even if it wasn't necessarily effective or as effective, it goes without saying that it has effect, because even if it's hot energy, if you're running quartz in a hot energy field, it's still imparting that pressure on the quartz to then discharge earth energy, because quartz only discharges one kind of energy.
Okay. Let me show you something. Okay.
Yep.
Because it goes right along with what they were trying to do, but they forgot something, or they didn't know. And hold on, it's not that I disagree with their process, so please understand this.
No.
I agree with the Tesla coil. I agree with the quartz. I agree with the line you can put it around the quartz. Okay. All of that's correct. It's where they have it connected to their Tesla coils wrong. That's it. So, because they're putting positive energy into it when they should have been putting negative energy into it to communicate with it. And the cold energy is the negative energy, which is the energy of the crystal. Plus, they needed the water as a conduit to talk to it. Now, this other guy, I wanted to show you this because I came across this today. Let me put it up here for you. This guy right here.
I know that guy.
Yeah, so go ahead. If you know it, let us know.
I'm 90% sure that's the guy that runs things in frequency with positive intent, and then ultimately can form positive crystal. Well, I say positive, but like proper crystalline structures based on positivity and basically through frequent cymatics, positive frequent cymatics and intention.
So build snowflakes and things like that, right?
Snowflakes, ice structures, ice memory, water memory. Yeah.
In order to capture the frequency. So now put it together with what I just told you about quartz. Does it not make more sense that it goes into the water with that information and then into the quartz? So if you want to impart memory, you must first have it on something as a structure of memory, right? So you get that whether it's ones and zeros or however you want to look at it, you put it into the water has the memory, the water goes into the quartz. Now it's talking to the quartz itself.
Yep. This ties right into that when we talked about the Vogel crystals, which was actually the same type of crystal that they were using in that other video that we saw. So that's a specifically cut quartz tower, more or less, that has a certain amount of geometric sides to a very certain proportion. But the key to a true Vogel crystal is the person that cuts it has to cut it with positive, emotion and good intent. Like that's like critical to the vote. That's why, like, if you buy like a real deal Vogel crystal, they're a ton of money. But you could also go and get a Vogel crystal from like a run-of-the-mill gem shop or whatever, and it's like $30 or $40. That's because you better hope that the guy in India who cut it was in a good mood that day.
Well,
it's sort of the deal.
Hold on. But what if we change that? So if we understand that it's water that's able to activate in crystal, and you say that it's based on the guy's mood, well, what if he's just sweating? What if it's a simple water and perspiration that gets on it, and that's able to take his mood and put it right into the crystal? What if you just now knew how to change it? What if I just told you I wanted to put the right frequency, but then I want to impart that onto there?
Yep.
I wanted to impart the goodwill onto there. So then would I be part of the circuit then? Would I be able to impart what I feel onto it if I was able to communicate with the crystal at that point?
Well, I think that it's all a give and a take, and by holding and communicating with the crystal, it is a two-way flow, just like energy in a wire. It's not just like a pipe with water that's flowing through it. It's an oscillation of back and forth. There's a two-way movement of the communication, even if there's a direction of travel, so to speak. So you could, it depends on what your energy is like. If you have a differential with the quartz, for instance, in this example, and the quartz is holding more energy than you're taking energy from the quartz. But if you're projecting energy, then you could project the energy through the quartz. It works like a pressure system, like everything else.
Well, yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying is there's imprinting on it. That's what the quartz has, and we know that because we use the silicon in our CPUs and stuff like that. We already know that they can imprint stuff on it. They could put memory in there. They could do what they want. The fact that I find is interesting is now with these experiments I'm doing, I'm actually showing you how to do it. I actually gave you the golden goose already. I gave you the answer. You know what I mean? I gave you the one thing that they've always wanted that anybody has ever wanted to put on these crystals, they now have. I gave you the way to do it. So, and it's what Tesla gave us. It's what was in his papers that were taken. He knew full well what was going on here. I guess that's what I'm trying to say today. The 3, the 6, the 9, the shape, the configuration, the structure of it, how it activates, why it activates with water, why it communicates the way it does. The fact that water has the memory and puts it into it and imparts it on it. Then it stays in the crystalline structure. They have things that are over in Japan. They have this whole shrine set up where it's a big structure with crystalline in it, and it's sitting right over top the water. And they have this whole thing about it that if you can communicate with it, well, I can. Now I just got to figure out how I want to. Do you want to put music into it? Do you want to impart your frequency into it? Do you want to put your good vibes into it? How do you want to proceed with it? You know what I mean? What is it you're truly looking for? And then do you want to keep it activated all the time, or do you want it not activated? Because sometimes you don't want it in the water, sometimes you do, you know?
So here's something interesting that I just kind of like this whole topic kind of just brought up is when you have like true opals, like fire opals and stuff like that. Opal is just quartz. It's microcrystalline chalcedony quartz, more or less. And structurally, it's more or less the same as a regular piece of chalcedony quartz, microcrystalline quartz. The definitive factor in both how it was formed and why it has those properties after the fact has a lot to do with the fact that it holds water. And when you oftentimes, like, when you own a piece of real and good quality opal, you know, provided it's not sealed or whatever have you, it's the natural stone through and through. You have to actually keep a certain amount of moisture on it at all times for it not to start flaking and dulling out and losing its color and breaking apart into more or less flakes. In fact, when you buy specimens of opal, they store them in bins of water because that's their environment that they exist in. And then you look at the light effects that it has and how it splits light apart into all that. And again, the only differentiating factor there is the fact that it was in the presence of water during that time. It's not like an inclusion, a structural defect, or a chemical thing that makes that happen. So it's really fascinating to be able to visualize an effect of water on a crystal structure in that regard, and just how it reacts to light. And I mean, some of the most beautiful. I happen to love opal. I think it's the most beautiful thing on the planet. You know.
So there was a thought in here about microwaves. So, and you get crystalline packets at the hobby store. You put water in there, put it in the microwave, and then it creates a crystal, right? Mm-hmm. Or you put it in like hot water if it's some type of salt, and it builds an extra crystal on top of it. Well, it kind of tells you that there's always a yin and a yang to things. There's always the negative electricity, and there's always the positive electricity. And if you took it as the earth creates microwaves as well, yeah, it's going to create a lot of crystalline structure, right? Just out of the elements that are sitting around. But then the water itself is what's communicating with them. That's in both cases. It has to be present. And it's just interesting in the way it comes down to, it was that easy to understand, and we just look right past it.
Yeah. Well, there's something kind of being discussed in the comments that I want to touch on just a little bit, because I think it's, you know, interesting, if nothing else. I mean, a lot of crystals do form in water. Okay, but and especially quartz. Okay, quartz is really formed in water. What differentiates like different types of quartz and regular quartz crystals and like opal, for instance, is that it's not formed in water in the regard that you're just necessarily thinking. You have to understand that the water that forms these crystals, okay, is really not water. It's really just a high solute brine solution that happens to have water as the solvent, you know, within it. Now, the differentiating factor, though, okay, has to do with the brine itself and the conditions that the brine are, you know, it is made in. Okay, it's made under such heat and pressure that you can never get levels of saturation in water like that in a practical, well, not never, but just, you know, in a practical non-laboratory type setting, you know, at surface level. You just can't. You can't go to your stove and boil a pot of water and throw it in until it won't take any more and then some. And, you know, you could do that, but that's not the same type of brine and solute that is forming these crystals down under, you know, the ground surfaces. That's where the heat and the pressure really come into play, because under pressure, that water could hold a lot more material, so to speak, than something at the surface level. That's why when it starts to rise up, the water will start to come off and it'll leave the crystal structures behind, but these crystal structures don't necessarily form, in a week's time once the water is gone. It requires a flow of it over time. It's all deposition. So with
if you,
I'm sorry, with opal, there's a difference because when it's forming, it's in a less brine solution, which is why opals are often found in like logs or for like as limb forms and things of that nature, because that brine solution gets sucked up into organic material a lot of times, and it'll start to crystallize in the organic material or in voids in the organic material. But in order for it to reach the organic material, it's already left a lot of its deposition behind. So it's in a less solute state at that point when it forms, which is why it forms that way, I think. I mean, I don't know. Nobody really knows how it's formed, but that's my understanding of why it's got such a high water need to its formation. That's a point that I was looking at.
So if we look at lava tubes, it's pretty simple. You have a massive amount of heat. You also have, if there's water in there, you have a hydrogen and oxygen. If you burn off the hydrogen from the oxygen's left over. It sits in the walls of it, and you get a high silicon level. You're going to be able to build quartz all day long. So that's not very hard to understand. And then the factor of how much pressure on it is based on which kind of quartz you're going to get. And it should also tell you about weak crystalline structure, which you said opal's pretty weak and it falls apart. Well, what if you took just simple P? I know that sounds bad, but take P, it makes a crystalline structure, right? But it's also easily dissolved because it's a weak crystalline structure. There's no pressure on it when it's built, not like it is like in a magma chamber or something like that. So when you resonate something like that, it should break down that crystal fairly easily in comparison to, say, quartz, which would continue to take a beating as it's being resonated.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I think that's also an important part that comes up later on, you know what I mean, in this kind of a discussion later, on exactly what you're trying to do with some of this stuff and why. And weak crystalline structure breaks easy, and it dissolves easy, and it goes back to what it was. So the harder stuff takes a lot longer, and man, it sits in this world forever, and it just resonates and continues to heal everything in our planet when it does it.
Yeah. I'm actually pretty pumped up for winter to be over at this point, although I'll enjoy it while it lasts, because where I just relocated to is about a half an hour away from the top Herkimer diamond mine in the world, and it's only like $100 for like basically a day of fresh digging. Like it's not like pick a pumpkin where it's all cut off the vines and you going like, oh, I picked a pumpkin or whatever. No, this is like like it's a known rich deposit, and you pay and they tear it open for you, and even if they didn't tear it open, you could dig to your heart's content. And they're pulling Herkimer diamonds out of there. Like I think the biggest one that they found was like 30 pounds. Like a 30-pound Herkimer diamond. It's just mind-blowing to think about.
That, yeah, I'm trying to think about it right now. That's pretty huge, man.
Yeah, I mean, even small ones are awesome, though. So you go there, you're not going to lose. I mean, nobody's going home without something good. For $100, it seems like probably worth the day and the half an hour drive. But what's cool about like Herkimer diamonds, for instance, is that it's quartz, but it's got a much higher refraction rate than just standard clear quartz generally does, and it's often double terminated. So rather than have the one point on one end, it grows from the middle out and terminates on both ends. So just from knowing what we know about the flow through the crystal structure and how it usually, the flow moves toward the tip, you have two paths of flow in a Herkimer diamond, which is super unique.
Yeah, I think I'd pay the tour guide $100 to show me the diamond. You know what I mean? Where he finds it and things like that, so I can understand it.
They actually have different packages there. So, like for $100, you go dig for the day. But I think for like 250 or something like that, they'll send you out with the guide that'll bring you to a spot, blah blah blah, that and he'll help you and that sort of thing. But I think for $1,000, right, for $1,000, they will take machinery and tear open a whole entire new section of earth for you, and basically that way you're really getting the best case scenario at that point. You're not digging a wall. Yeah. That's really crazy.
Yeah. $1,000.
Mohawk Valley mine.
And you get to keep what you find in the $1,000?
What you find. Yeah. The guy said he's not, the guy that owns it is not a miner. He was having some yard work done or whatever, and they were excavating, and they're like, there's insane amounts of, crazy quartz crystals there and whatnot. And long story short, one of the guys said, "Hey, listen, what you got here?" He's like, "You should probably, make this open to the public and available." He's like, "I think you'd be very impressed with, how well you do." And apparently, it's been a pretty good destination. I mean, based on what I've seen, I think it's only been open for like 10 years or something. So this guy's got hundreds of acres, if I'm not mistaken, and they haven't torn into nearly any of it.
They probably made more money than the worth of the diamonds in the ground.
It's hard to say because those things could be really valuable. I just think that it's like one of those things that, like, if you're finding little ones mostly, then you're going to have to do something with them to really get the most out of them. Like just selling the specimen itself is probably not worth all that much. But you pull these big honkers out, these big ones are worth all sorts of money. But the problem being that if you are digging all these out in a commercial, like, you're going to saturate the market with all these huge Herkimer diamonds. Like, what, the market's only so big for that too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, he was just asking if you already answered that. Herkimer diamonds, yes.
Yeah, they're Herkimer diamonds.
So, hey, real quick, I just want to let everybody know I open memberships. That's what that thing is on the bottom right there for my channel. And there's cool things that you can get for emojis, so you can put them in the chat when you're on here. There's all of us, and then there's mushrooms. And I got a couple more. I'll go ahead and close some of the stuff I have sitting here on my computer and show everybody. Sorry, Joe, I gotta tell everybody so they know. So
no, please, everybody better join. Come on, it's a couple bucks, and look at the emojis. Right, and I'm not a member yet either, so pot called the kettle black, I suppose. But
well, just to show you real quick, this is one of the next ones. Once we get 5 members, then I'll put this one on there. That's my Joker coil. And then there's the one for Joe right there. That one's really cool. I like that.
There I am.
And then we have the whole team, or the 3 main part of the team, I should say. And then you guys saw those ones. Yeah, Ben and his hard hat. Oh my God, dude. One of my favorites. So, and then we also have shrooms. You got to have the shrooms on there.
And it's my understanding that 3 holes is coming soon.
Oh, yeah. So I'm working on it. Yeah. I'm trying to put it in the biggest letters I possibly can, but it's not exactly the easiest thing to see in those little things. So anyway, that was it. I just wanted to let everybody know that's what was the whole thing on the bottom there is you join, you'll be able to use those emojis in the chat. I think they're pretty funny. Ben's got my face on his. So I bought a membership on his channel, and now I just go in there and put my face for a couple of things. I thought it was totally awesome. I love that.
Yeah, and small update now that I'm relocated, which has been for months and months the bane of my existence. I'm looking to actually get my channel up and running, probably in the next 2 months. I'm just going to take a month to format myself, and then going to do some production starting probably in the next week or so, and see if I can start pumping out some videos. It probably won't. It's not going to be nearly as frequently as this, but at least get a couple videos out a month and stuff to have. And, I'll create memberships, and I'll have little buttons too, and
nice
three holes, one cup. The whole 9 yards. Because I'm literally awful. So
have all the good ones, huh?
Right.
Nice.
I keep it real for Nathan's sake.
Oh man. Yeah, that'd be awesome. And then if you have all your stuff verified, we can always put the show on your channel when you come on. It's awesome.
Yeah, for sure, man. I'd have it no other way.
All right. So, all right, let's get back to the crystals for a little bit.
Please.
I just want to say this. It's weird. I think there's a lot to that whole crystal thing because of the energy and the way it affects people. Like it's just on how your body can take it in and how sensitive it is to it. And when it's putting out some form of energy, even though it looks, just millivolts is small, I think it's pretty big in the overall picture of things, because if you're that sensitive to it, it'll affect you every time.
Right. Well, I mean, when you're measuring the output of it, you're measuring it in the classical electrical sense, and like everything else, it's more of a frequency equation than it is anything else. And
it is.
Quartz has an extraordinarily high frequency, so there could be just inherent benefit on that. Plus, my understanding is that the derivative lower octaves of the native frequency of quartz, forget what it is off the top of my head. The native frequency is like 32,800 something hertz or something to that effect. The way that it scales down becomes very analogous to beneficial, positive, wellness type things.
Yeah, I agree. Mike, what do you got going on there?
Well, here's my power cell. So this cell here has been working since August.
Nice.
So I got the pulse circuit there, so it's on a timing circuit. Dumps into a light here and also dumps into the capacitor bank. So I'm just finalizing everything, all the technology, everything that goes into the cell. So yeah, it's really come along, and pretty excited on the results. So yeah.
Very cool. You said in the chat that you bought some piezo stuff, or?
Yeah. Okay. First of all, Nathan, this is probably one of your best podcasts. Honestly, honestly, hands down, probably one of your best. Kudos to you two for doing this show.
Right on.
Yeah, he's right on the money. He is so on the money with this stuff, and pretty much everything he's talked about today is what's in that cell.
Oh, look, I built a cell in my head and I didn't even know it. Look at me go.
Yeah, you guys are right on it, man. You're right on it. I've been working on this for 2.5 years, so I'm just designing a new cell phone or a new case. So I'm doing another revision right now. I'm actually got the 3D printer running right now. Had to do some corrections. So I'm finding when you construct cells like this, trying to build them at a very large scale is very difficult, and there's too much room for error. So when you build a cell this size, there's a lot less room for error, especially in the construction method. So what I plan to do is take several of these and put it into the 12 by 12 plate instead of having 1.8 volts per plate. Now I'm going to have 12 volts per plate, right? So
Yeah.
I need less cells to do, or less, plates to do the job, right? So I worked it out. It'll take about 8 of these guys in one cell. And I've also found too, the number one enemy to these power cells, and it's pretty obvious, it's air.
Mhm.
Air is the enemy. When you make these cells, they have to be hermetically sealed. So seal them up in epoxy or any way you can, but they have to be completely airtight. That's what I've noticed degrades this cell the worst is air. So
Yeah, mind-blowingly, air is the enemy of everything.
yeah, it is.
Genuinely is what natural formation is really thrives in open air. Almost nothing. Almost everything degrades in open air.
Right.
Yeah.
And what do the trees outside? What do they breathe? They breathe carbon dioxide. That's what they breathe. So the more carbon dioxide you have in the atmosphere, so I'll say like 65 billion years ago when the dinosaurs were around, there was a lot more vegetation happening because the CO2 levels were so much higher. That's why I think a lot of the animal life was so large because of this.
Yeah,
That was the
it's
only way
crazy
they
to
could
think
survive.
that life's dependence, well, not all life, but most living things on Earth are dependent on oxygen. And that's like the most insidious type of chemical
Yeah.
that you could become dependent on. It's like
Right.
it's literally trying to chew you up every breath you take. It's crazy to think.
Yeah. But the plant life thrives on CO2. So, they're saying, the CO2 levels in this global greenhouse BS, in my opinion, that's why we have a problem with our ecosystem collapsing because there's not enough CO2 in the air to sustain the plant life.
Well, they have to have the right kind of CO2, don't they? It can't
Yeah.
be.
Right.
Yeah, we're
I
off
would bring the
when we do
Hemis back.
smog.
Right.
Bring the
The
Hemis
earth,
back.
the earth is a living organism. The earth is alive. Just like we are alive, the earth is alive. When certain things go out of balance, the earth has an amazing way of correcting itself.
Yeah. Well, if I'm not mistaken, we need just less cars and more cow farts, and we'd be all right and getting the ecosystem right because it's the right type of thing that they breathe.
So, like when they come, like I'm all for, clean, energy and stuff like that. But when the governments and, they sell it off as, we're the most evil thing on the planet doesn't care about us. The planet's been here 4.5 billion years. Okay. If anybody's going to go bye-bye, I think we're going bye-bye first, and the planet's going to be just fine.
Oh yeah, it will. It'll thrive too.
Exactly. So,
I saw something really interesting, and it kind of, I don't know. They created I forget who it was, but they created a vacuum, and then they repressurized the vacuum with propane, and then they burned oxygen in a propane environment. Get your head around that real quick.
How do you burn oxygen and propane?
But they reversed it. Usually the propane burns in the oxygen atmosphere. So they reversed it. They made a propane atmosphere and then ignited the oxygen in that. and it's a controlled burn because it's the oxygen, it's not the propane in that circumstance.
Right. Yeah. Like any kind of oxyacetylene torch, you
Mhm.
always turn on the acetylene first before the oxygen.
Yeah.
They have a little saying. It's called A before O, or up you go.
And listen,
Yeah.
Right.
the guy that has a past in welding, yes, you definitely A before O.
Yeah.
The acetylene will burn in atmosphere.
It's a good thing I'm not a welder.
Sooty, but whatever.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So as far as the cell's concerned, oxygen is the enemy. I'm working on basically perfecting the electrolyte substance that goes in the cell. So when it's hermetically sealed, it will never dissipate. And that's what's happened with my power cell. Part of my research is showing that air is the friggin' enemy. It's the enemy. So I'm constructing a cell that's completely encased, and after it's done, it's going to be basically infused inside epoxy.
Nice.
That way the air is not going to get to it, and the electrolyte substance that I've created will always stay in a jelly state, where the ionic flow will always be able to transport the ions from the sacrificial cathode.
Nice.
And that's what's happening with the cell right now.
Didn't they put the one that's lasted for the longest in beeswax in order to seal out all the other stuff?
Yeah, there's many ways. I've explored many ways to seal it up, but I've been focusing so much on the cell construction itself. This was actually believe it or not, this was one of my first designs, and I'm going back to it because it works so well. Less chance for error when you're constructing the cell is a big one. You can really dial in how much you're putting in, your portions of whatever elements you're using. Very important. So naturally, everybody thinks, oh, you got to build a giant cell. Well, a giant cell is 50 times more difficult to build because there's a lot more chance for error at that scale, unless you have, a multi-billion-dollar laboratory facility where you can actually do that. I'm doing this on my kitchen table. You know what I mean?
Well, wouldn't it be better, though, Mike, just to have a small cell and trigger your renegade device in order to get it to amplify the energy to the piezo to get it to be a higher level anyway?
Right. So the one cell is going to take 8 of these, and 8 of these will give me over 12, almost 13 volts. So I wire them up all in series. I got a special silicone form. I put it inside that mold, and I pour my epoxy over the whole thing. 24 hours, I'm done. I got a working cell, and I can power anything with it.
Well, that's
Playing
what I
devil's
mean.
advocate here, but trying to meld the two subjects together a little bit. And I've pondered this before, but there's really no good answer. Wouldn't it be incredible to be able to, rather than epoxy coat something to seal it and prevent the oxidation and so on, wouldn't it be even more amazing to be able to grow a crystalline structure directly on the surface? Like a quartz or something like that has a secondary, then you're killing 2 birds, 1 stone. So to speak.
You're getting into nano cultivation, which you need a very, very controlled environment to do that in, which unfortunately I don't have that facility to do that. But yes,
I've seen like but even when they grow quartz crystals and so on, because it grows in the form that it is, and it always grows off of a seed, that's the only way to really kickstart the proper formation and everything. I think that one of the biggest challenges people trying to address that exact issue is getting it to encapsulate properly and control like the growth. I think that where resonance fits in with that's sort of where my mind is bridging the gap, is almost like an ultrasonic vacuum chamber, or not vacuum chamber, pressure chamber sort of deal, where it's then ultrasonically, bringing the entire cavity into a form of resonance.
Yeah.
that would bring your, your item that you're crystallizing into resonance, and
Yeah.
then it doesn't know the difference between that and seed. That's
Yeah,
where my mind's going.
Yeah. See, like another way you can look at these cells is it's a diode. Is actually what you're making is a diode, but it has a redox reaction inside with the elements that I'm using, which creates the piezoelectric effect in there. So now when I encapsulate it and seal it up with epoxy, there's pressure built up inside. And that creates your power. So yeah, so everything you've been talking today is just like hitting home with me, because I've been working on this for 2.5 years, and it's like, yeah, man, this guy's right on it.
Yeah,
right
it's the constant stress on the piezo that,
it loves
cranking out at that point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And,
what we should all put together real quick is that when you use this little piezo buzzer, it's quartz in there, and it amplifies the cold electricity. So
that's right.
when Mike runs his device there in the Renegade, he's doing the same thing. So it's telling you the exact pathway that it wants to be talked to, or what energy it wants to absorb. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not lying to you. It's telling you the truth. It's exactly what you need.
Yeah, because the way I see it, and I don't know, some people might beg to differ, I personally think the piezoelectric effect is the actual gateway to the 0-point energy field. When you tickle it, when you tickle the piezoelectric transducer, it goes into harmonic resonance with the 0-point energy. And what happens is when it makes that merge, when they come together, the 0-point energy gives you some more power back in the effect. And I've seen that in the Renegade device. It's pretty obvious, getting
can I throw this out? And maybe it's just restructuring what you're saying. Like, maybe a properly formed piece of quartz crystal, right, is in equilibrium with a etherical force. Okay. In equilibrium. So applying the pressure to it then acts as an avenue of disbursement, so to speak, because then you're creating a pressure differential on something otherwise in equilibrium.
Exactly. Yep. And it works so well in the Renegade. It's like, it was a no-brainer. I had to keep it in the circuit because I was just getting so much gain from it. And the ones I use in my motor are the barium titanate. And, that's going to be one of the elements in the cell is barium titanate. So
there's like with the cold energy, and this is one thing I was kind of alluding to earlier, is, you have cold earth energy, but now that should imply that you have the opposite, the opposite side of all of electromagnetic effects and all radiation, because like I said, with quartz, it's known, it's visual, it's right, cold light phenomena, triboluminescence. So you have hot light and then you have cold light. You have hot energy and you have cold energy. Now, when you start realizing this, that means that there's a whole other mirrored image side of all the hot energy and electrical phenomena that we know. So when you're talking about the antimatter or it's just the mirrored image of itself on the other side. So now taking the cold energy and then redoing what you did on the other side, you should be able to then have cold energy anti-effects, through the same systems that reversed it in the first place. But now the inside's hot and the outside that produces like an electromagnetic field, for instance, should be a cold energy electromagnetic field with the reverse. It's with the reverse polarity.
Right. With these cells that I've been working on, actually, if you pulse them, I was actually very surprised, and there's no coil in the circuit. I'm actually getting a back EMF from the cell. Now, is that the piezoelectric?
Yeah, you were saying that. That's awesome. I mean,
yeah. And there's no coil anywhere in that system.
By the
more
way,
than one way.
that would explain why I'm getting anywhere from 2 to 8 amps of current coming out of the cell. That's a lot for such a small footprint.
Yeah.
So we did some early tests with a little bigger of an actual cell. We were getting we peaked out around 80 amps coming out of one cell. So the thing is, yeah, that's great and all, but to an electrical circuit, that's not very good. You could do some damage with that. So we're trying to keep it under control. Right now, we're hoping to keep it between 2 and 8 amps. I think that's pretty respectable and controllable.
Yeah, I mean, I've always referred to that as like a cascading effect.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just what happens when it starts to draw too much and fall apart.
Oh, real quick, I just wanted to address your comment about the Earth and the cold energy. You do know that's what it is in there, right? You go out there past when you get out of Earth's field and you get past the ozone layer, there's not a whole lot of magnetics out there because they pull inward. And they pull inward because it's a cold system. So that's exactly why they don't understand why gravity's working the way it does. They have electrics that are going on inside the Earth that'll actually trap the positive and trap the negative. Then they have cold energy going on in the core, which is actually the ether itself is cold energy. So it's pulling towards the center in the magnetic field. That's why you get a magnetic signature, but you don't get magnetics on it. It's the same reason that you can defeat Lenz's law with cold energy.
That's right.
It's the exact same process. That's exactly what's going on with the Earth. Once you understand this energy, you understand why it's so important, because it's everywhere, all over our planet, and they don't even talk about it in physics.
They've just been looking in the wrong places. They think the only way to get power is through hot energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the interesting thing about that is it all has to do with just rectifying the manner of production of the energy that we create. See, we create this energy, and it's hot energy. You know, like because of the method in which we create it. And it needs to be rectified in order to be the same type of energy that is the Earth energy. But what I wonder is, like, you know, so if Earth energy is the baseline, if that's the norm, and based on what you're just saying, and I mean, I don't know, like, I don't claim to know, I'm not sure, you know, if once you exit Earth's atmosphere, if all of the potential out there is the same type of energy that is present in Earth energy, right? Then what's this middle ground in atmosphere, right? That is the mechanism of hot energy even being a thing. Is it because there's always got to be two sides to every coin, or is it just because it's in atmosphere? Is that really it? Is oxygen once again a culprit?
Well, there's hot energy in our
hydrogen a
planet.
culprit?
There's no question there's hot energy in our planet. It's just, where do you draw the line between hot and cold is really all it is. Because your flyback transformer puts out hot energy, but it's relatively cold. But the energy it puts out is really hot. So where's your line? Draw your line and we'll tell you which side's which. So it doesn't take very much to pull hot energy out. As a matter of fact, you could do it with microwaves. And microwaves come out of the top and bottom of our planet. So you're actually getting the hot side of energy inside our planet somewhere, but you're also getting the cold. So you do have both.
Well, if you think about like hot and cold energy and where do you draw the line, think about a magnetic bar, you know, where it's painted two colors and one says north and one says south, right? And you know, there's some point of transitional period there where it shifts from one to the other. The ironic thing about it is, like, other than the fact that it's like toroidal force to a certain degree, really what's the difference between one side and the other as far as observables is concerned? The answer is nothing. It's just subjective to what they're in environmental relationship with. But, on a standalone principle, then you're talking more of a push and a pull. One's pulling in, one's pushing out. That's sort of what you're looking at.
Yeah, non-equilibrium.
Right.
So if you keep everything in non-equilibrium, you basically have perpetual motion, right? As soon as you go into equilibrium, that's when everything just dies off. It just dies out. Whatever you're doing, it doesn't matter what device you're using, it will die off. So, like what I'm trying to do in my Renegade is keep that non-equilibrium, create a zero current potential. And if I create that zero current potential, I'm not actually sucking the battery dry. It's just basically I'm just stealing the voltage potential off it.
Yeah.
And then you get the reactance inside the coil. That's where the current is created, inside the coil. I don't need it from the battery. I'm making it in the coil. And then when you short it out in between two transducers, guess what happens? You get way more power. That's what happens. It's not that hard.
It's funny because you have to think totally opposite to get the transducers to work.
Yeah.
Because you're cutting the negative because when you put the positive in there, it's just stopping the signal from being able to take it in and push it out.
Right.
Then when you cut the negative, it changes that, right? So all it's doing is turning off the power that's going to it, and then now it's allowing it to do its job.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah. This conversation brings me right back, like my mind right back to all the first times that I was, on these lives with Nathan when I was kind of discussing my, theories of what I've found. And it just all boils down to equilibriums and differentials, gradients in between the two that are the manifest of the effects that are observables and things of that nature. Like it's really, no matter what you're talking about, whether it's it's gonna be I'm trying to, it's 0 point energy or just amplification of resonant energy, or capturing more than you put in, or making something levitate, or any of these effects is going to be as a result of that. It's going to be the differential, the gradients, the pressures working against each other.
Yeah.
That's really all there is.
Yeah, like Nathan said earlier in the show, it goes back to what Tesla says: energy, frequency, vibration.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always been haunting me in the back of my head for the last 20 plus years. So now that I'm putting all these devices and they're actually starting to work, I'm making correlations with that energy, frequency, and vibration. And the Renegade's the epitome of it. So,
well, the Quartz tells you everything you need to know about it. That was just 369 right there.
Yeah.
I want to open up a can of worms. Can I open up a can of worms?
Sure.
Yeah, it depends on which can you want to open.
Well, no, it's something we could talk about. So I'm a firm believer, in the fact that plasma is the animating life force.
Yeah.
Plasma is the animating life force. Now, when I look back into the chart that I had shown a long time ago as to my theory of the descent of energy to matter, one of the critical components, and one thing that was just so apparent to me that had to happen, was that when you reach the end of the energy descent, where energy then starts consolidating enough to become matter in any regard, it starts to move back up that flow of chart. And where matter in its form, as like an elemental matter, right, where that is actually constructed is where plasma also manifests. So it comes back up the chart and lands right at the same point where plasma manifests. Now, the reason that I think that this is interesting and why it's a can of worms is I'm saying that plasma is potentially the animating life force. Okay. And that plasmatic energy attached to matter is both mechanism of time and life. All right. Now, that said, when you have a crystal, which is solid matter, and it's capable of tapping into and create, frequency and oscillation, which can manifest as potential, even if it's not detectable, it's a form of plasmatic discharge. Like, and you could see that when you hit a lighter and it sparks.
Right.
So, is the crystal alive? Or,
Yeah,
if it's
part
not
of the,
alive, is it producing a life force?
well, I think, to make a statement that, the plasma is a life force, yeah, I would 100% agree to that. I've had some weird stuff happen with my Renegade device under certain conditions where basically it took a life of its own, let's say. I've heard Eric Dollar do experiments with plasma in a ball. He called it his cosmic induction generator. And he was doing an experiment where he had this galaxy formed inside the ball. And this one person entered the room, and he is the type of person that you don't like, kind of a sketchy type person. And the second he entered the room, the plasma inside exploded, and all the glass went in his direction, nobody else's direction. Whatever it was, it did not like him. And after that happened, that guy took off. He was never seen again.
That's a wild story, and that's totally believable too.
Yeah.
So Gerald said something in the chat, and I actually want to build on what he was saying, because I mean,
That's right here.
It's very hard to tie all of the things that I've said over so long on this show together in like how I mean to express it. So 2 more parts, right? Well, yes. Now, when I was talking about the descent of energy to matter, plasma was only a byproduct of the higher reactions. Okay. And the way that it broke down was from, and this is just off the top of my head, and it'd probably be easier if I looked at my own work, but my theory of it was that you have an absolute and a still, okay? And that there's a disturbance in the still that then comes back together in an equilibrium that's never quite the same as it was when it was absolutely still, okay? And that is a potential, and at that point, any aggravation to that potential would be a mechanism for energetic waveform, okay? So now you have a waveform. Once you have a field of waveforms and interacting waveforms, those waveforms interact constructively, deconstructively, and on the scalar level to create offshoots of energy, okay, which are constituent of all your particles. So all your particle physics comes off of that. That's why an electron has a spin. If you have, in phase offset, reverse, like 180 degree out of phase, like deconstructive interference, then you're left off with the top of a waveform that has potential and forward momentum leading to spin. There you go. That's the idea there. Now, as soon as you have the accumulation of these different particles, there's, depending on where they come from, they have a charge. Okay. And it's the accumulation of these charges in the presence of matter that ultimately manifests observables. Observables would be like plasma, for instance, or magnetic fields, and so on. So all of it being constituent of the prior. Now, if you look at the prior, it is 2 prior. You have plasma, then you have the constituents of the plasma being the energetic part that it's made up of. And then prior to that, you have waveform. So I agree that there is more to it. It's just the manifest of that's my opinion of it, and it is, yeah. So the life force is not just plasmatic, but that's the manifest form. as far as its interaction with physical matter is concerned, then the plasma has its higher connections.
Well, plasma is considered the fourth state of matter. So the fourth state of matter, plasma, I think, is the transitional conduit from, say, the fifth state of matter to the third state. You can't get there unless you have the fourth state of matter present. It's a conduit of transfer of energies, right?
It bridges the gap. So that was another thing we had previously talked about, how plasma and hydrogen are very similar. And they're very similar in the sense that plasma is matter-like energy, and hydrogen is an energy-like matter. And they're almost interchangeable in the sense that that is the gradient. It's from hydrogen to plasma to energy, from hydrogen to matter. That's the gradient. Yeah. That's my opinion anyway. I don't know.
Real quick, guys. Real quick. I just want to say thank you to Tim Adams for becoming a member of my channel. Check out the emojis and make sure you use them in the chat.
Exactly. Cool. Oh, just a little announcement from my part. Actually signed up with the StreamYard account. So I got a little bit more features on my channel, and I will be going live tonight at 9 o'clock Eastern. Normally I don't do a Saturday night show, but I have a lot of stuff I want to chat about, and hopefully you, Nathan, and the boys, if you don't have anything to do tonight or whatever, I'll be sending my invites out later on today.
Awesome, man.
Right on. Yeah, we'll definitely be there. So tonight, 6 o'clock, like normal, 9 o'clock for you.
Yeah. Yep. What was the other thing I was going to mention? Oh, yeah, you were talking about the hydrogen. So part of the reactions of the redox reaction that happens in the cell is hydrogen. So there you go. There is a plasma going on in there. So there's everything you've been talking about today is exactly what's going on inside my cell. So it's just a matter of getting the right elements and the right layering and put it all together into one little package, and you'll be surprised what you can achieve with such a small cell.
So with the crystals, right?
Yeah.
If quartz or other piezoelectrics are potentially like a conduit between matter and energy,
right?
Realistically, without the need for necessarily external force, so to speak,
right?
But not necessarily like to the degree that it would take to bring another element into a plasma state.
Yeah,
because it's creating its own energy by virtue of what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
By tickling it, giving it a little bit of energy to ensure that reaction to start, that's when you get more energy coming back to you. So you just have to tickle it. It doesn't take much. The more you tickle it, the more it's going to draw back. Plus some, right? So even Thomas Bearden talked about that. All you got to do is tickle it at the right frequency and vibration, and that extra energy from the vacuum comes in. So,
yeah, no, it's interesting stuff.
It might be a Gerald last experiment he just did when he turned everything off and it was still running.
Yeah.
Sorry, Joe, go ahead. You were probably in the middle of something.
Oh no, I was just about to probably get off topic, so it's fine. You kept me in line. For what it's worth, though, Gerald was saying about dimensionality. I think that we should tackle that topic soon. Maybe have him on, and we could do a show on that. I think that's something that we haven't really delved into all too much, and it's super relevant, especially when it comes to the geometries of things, because all the geometry that we experience and all the geometry that we're trying to tap into is upper dimensional geometry. And it's sort of funny to think, but it's, as humans trying to play with these things, it's sort of like a stick figure that you drew on a piece of paper trying to create a clay model.
Yeah.
It's exactly sort of that. It becomes difficult. So it's definitely something that we should tackle.
Well, I got a question for Gerald, and it's kind of different. I don't know if he's ever run his coil this way. Have you ever run it in cold on one side and then hot on the other that's 180 out? You ever tried that? I just want to know what had happened. Not that it'd be good, bad, or indifferent, just a curiosity.
I have that equation going through my mind right now. And it feels very yin-yang-y.
That's what I mean. It's like a polar opposite, but would it create some type of different effect in the coil itself?
Sounds like a lot of torsion, to be honest. Like a lot of torsion would be taking place. You'd be dealing with a lot of this going on.
Yeah.
And that force itself could be something incredible.
That's what I mean. What is that, Mike?
That goes back to like Hutchinson effect though, too. Like I think that has what to do with it. Like, sorry, Mike.
I just bought a new ultrasonic cleaner.
Oh, that's
nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Is it adjustable or?
Well, no, this one's pretty basic. It's a small one. If I like it, I might even buy a bigger one. I just want to try it out. I have to condition some of my components, so I have to actually ultrasonic clean them to get certain nanoparticles to come off the materials, and that will actually enhance the effects. So yeah, I'm dabbling with the ultrasonics, man. That's where it's at.
It's definitely where it's at. Ultrasound in general, and the more you're able to tune it too, is that's pretty key.
Well, hold on. I wanted to get back to Hutchinson real quick. You just mentioned it.
Yeah.
So, do you think that's what tore that metal apart? Is if you put the hot and the cold in there together, and then it created like a plasmoid in there and just ripped it apart?
Yeah,
well,
it thermal runaway.
Yeah, right. You have a situation where you have the breaking of molecular bonds and the covalent electrons and stuff just being in total conflict with one another because they're opposites, and then dematerialization and then internal torsion, just literally tearing it, and they're shredding it into pieces. Like, yeah, when you have two major opposing forces like that, I think that's exactly what was going on, frankly.
Well, Gerald's schooling us again. He's already done the experiment.
Yeah, I figured as much.
And he did it in the water, and he told us about it a while back, but he didn't explain it. So there you go. That's amazing.
Yeah. There was one comment before about scalar and frequency. Well, they didn't say scalar, but they said frequency cancellation, deconstructive interference, pure deconstructive interference, I suppose. Personally, I subscribe to what Bearden said about that. And the best analogy that I found to kind of understand it in like such a simple way is like, imagine like if you take a rubber band, and you cut it so it's like just a piece of rubber line, whatever. And if you were to imagine it in a frequency, but then you were to negate the frequency, and then because it's continuing to negate, you're stretching it and stretching it and stretching it and stretching it. And then at some point you just go and you let go of one side, and then it snaps. And then all of the built up cancellation comes back into manifest for use. And that's, that creates a vacuum and a drop at that point, so you're going to have one spot that gets sucked of energy and another spot that's getting all the energy that was built up in the band plus from where it snapped. That's sort of what Bearden was getting to with that. So
that reminds me of your list.
It's not cancellation. I get a little mental because I say it all the time and I get mental with myself. It's not cancellation.
No. It reminds me of your list. Remember when you were talking about the ether in your list? Mm-hmm. And you said it all starts out with a zero plane, and then you put in the first frequency and it goes in, right? And then it starts it in the ether of what's going on. Well, one side's obviously going to get positive, the other side negative. So you've already created two vortexes with the positive and negative side. And it just makes sense in what you were just saying.
Mm-hmm. That's it. And because it still has, one plane of frequency in a second dimensional sense, it still has propagation. That's what you have to understand, is that there's still propagation because of the one plane of frequency that still exists. So it still exists on this side of Planck's distance. Yep. Scalar. Love that stuff. Yeah, he does only go so far. It's I don't know, though. He like the way that he said that it was used was obviously from one very specific perspective.
Yeah, a lot of this is that way. And one thing I will say is you have to be able to take all of it in. And if you can accept everything as true up front, what can you take out of it that is untrue? And once you have it all together, not by piece, but you have to put it all in there as, yes, I believe it. And then what parts get pulled out because they just don't work with everything else. At least that's the way I figure things out. I don't go the other route because it's too hard to build it a block at a time.
Yeah, it is. But you gotta take the tidbits from where they come and then use your own discretion to put it together. That's what separates people. And that's why you have the jack of all trades and the handyman who, like, you could, if you're in a pinch or whatever, it might not be fixed the usual way, but it's getting fixed one way or the next, and it doesn't matter what he's got on hand, he's going to make it work.
That's right.
That's it. Like, it's so silly. Like, I just moved into this new apartment. The thing that, like, plugs up the drain or whatever in the bathtub, that thing wasn't working, and I was like, oh, these things are cheap, I could go out and buy a new one.
Yeah,
there's no real fixing this one exactly. I was like, however, I'm just going to use my brain, look around, and find the way to modify this based on what I know of this very simple principle and fix it. And, oh, look, I have this little piece of rubber cup thing that has something attached to it. I'm going to cut the thing off. So I just shoved the little rubber cup thing, and it made up enough of the gap that now the thing works, and kiss my ass, I didn't have to spend $5 or whatever they cost. Probably $300 these days with the inflation, but whatever.
I do that all the time. My entire toolbox is filled with gadget stuff. Like anything you could think of, I probably have in there. So I manipulate stuff all the time to fix it, to make it work.
That's it. You just make it work. And you take what you know and you look around and see what's similar to that, and then say, okay, application. There you go. And that's why you got to get a little bit from everywhere and put it all together into a nice, neat pack sometimes. And that's that. Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. Well, when you're building coils and stuff, for people like me who's got like 50 million coils running around, I just grab one at a random and see exactly what the value of it is and see if it resonates with it. Kind of like Sean does. There's a bunch of stuff that's just crumpled up, you know what I mean? But it's wire. He just wants to see what the resonance value of it is. And then you wonder why he starts coming out with pyramids and balls, and they're all Tesla coils, and you're going, okay, this guy can pretty much build anything that looks like a Tesla coil because he figured out the understanding of it, of it's just a mass amount of copper, and you can put it in any configuration you want, and based on that configuration, there's a magnetic value to it. And that's really it.
Right. It's there's a, and this is why I appreciate what you do here so much, is because, okay, I remember I used to restore straight razors. I think I might have told you this story one time, but I used to restore straight razors, right? And it's such like a niche thing, but there's like a pretty big community of it. And like there's guys that would get into the hobby or whatever and then dip out of it, whatever. But the one thing that was like a lost art was honing a razor. It's just not something that you learned how to do throughout your life. And they would go on these forums, and these guys that had been in the forums for a long time made it sound like it was this impossible feat that you shouldn't even try because you're going to mess up your razor that you just spent all this money on, and the means doesn't justify the end, and therefore you should send it to them for $25 and they'll sharpen it for you. And they would try to give like an explanation of how to do it, and they would convolute it so much that the average person's like, I just bought this razor for $350. There's no way I'm going to sit there and ruin this thing. I'm just going to send it to them for 25 and call it a day.
Mm-hmm.
But let me tell you something. Yeah, there's a little technique to it. Yeah, there's like use your best discretion. But it's rubbing a blade on a rock, man. That's what it is. Okay? You can get all scientific about it, you can get all special about it, but chances of you actually ruining something are pretty low. Okay? But that's not what they wanted you to think. And that's how like a lot of these topics are. It's just overcomplicated for no good reason. And then nobody there to understand it well enough to then say, this could be brought into a more digestible fashion that makes it tangible for more people. And you do that. So thank you for that. And, Sean is just like an ultimate tinkerer and never, ever ceases to amaze me. Like everything he comes up with, no matter if it's super successful or, like still a work in progress, just the, putting the axe to the grinding wheel and getting it done. Like it's always done with like the highest quality work. Like hats off to him for that. So yeah. All right. I'm done stroking you fellas. That's right. But thank you for that.
I'll be honest with you, man. Everybody that comes on, it's really been cool. We get a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds doing this. And it's really cool in some of the perspective. I was watching Joel Legacy yesterday, and the cool thing was he's working kind of on the same experiment I am. He took a coil that was the same winding as his primary and his ground. So it's wound the exact same size as his ground, but then he used frequency doubling in order to get the other coil, right?
All right.
That was awesome, by the way, because I do that all the time in what I do. It's really cool to see somebody else do it. Then he turned around and he said, okay, but then I can put like 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 of these around this thing. And because it's the same frequency, it'll resonate the same. As long as my primary in this is the same as my ground. So he told you right there how to make a floating ground for a coil in order to resonate any kind of craft that you want on any of your UFO projects right there, as long as you follow that simple little rule. And it all had to do with how radio operators built their radios. And I thought it was the most fantastic thing in the world, because I literally just took 2 Tesla coils that should not resonate together and forced them to resonate together based on that same principle. Totally amazing.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, like, there's ways to force it. I hate to say it. There's ways to force it. A lot of times when you force something into resonant harmonics with something else that's not its native frequency, really one of 2 things could happen. Either it's going to accommodate that and go with the resonant, the sympathetic resonance of it, or it's going to ruin itself, structurally ruin itself, because it's trying to get into the resonance, but, it's so much stress and conflict to get it into resonance that it'll fail. But I think that's like a very extreme example, to be honest,
Well, once things fall into resonance, this is what's cool about the resonance. Everything flows so much easier. There's no more tension in it. It just seems like it works like 5 times better as soon as you get it to the right frequency. So it'll fight you, like you said. As soon as you get in the right resonance, it all starts to drop a little bit and then harmonize right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's like super conductivity. you get. There's no resistance anymore.
I
Sorry,
think
Mike,
that's
you go ahead.
where like tuning things to prime numbers tends to be an interesting point of thought, because if you tune something that its perfect resonant frequency is at a prime number, then technically the only thing that should be able to fall into resonance with it perfectly would be something that's capable of that same, that's tuned to that frequency because it's prime.
Yeah. Well, that's the crazy thing. I like to run my coil in even numbers. So as much as I possibly can. And it makes it easier to figure out where the resonance point is in another coil, even if it's a mismatch coil. Like I can get sympathetic resonance, or then I can hit resonance dead on. And
but the thing with that, Nathan, is that doesn't that also make it vulnerable to so many different types of interference and other like environmental factors?
it depends. If resonance at a distance, if it's in my garage, not a lot of environmental factors go on. If we're outside, maybe something, but frequency is kind of different that way. It could work with sound too. So well, I'll say this. I could get more out of them in distance if I put my Tesla coil over a box and just had the rod go down to the center and into the box, and then the sound pushes it through the box. Okay. As I resonate it, then I can get it to shoot all the way across the room if I want. It'd be very easy. So, but resonance itself, I could set something in resonance, then go over to the other coil, maybe 8 feet away, and it'll start up oscillating in that same resonance. But depending if you hit the frequency dead on or if you hit it in a multiple of 2 or multiple of 3, then it'll tell you how much value that you're getting in it. So I hit mine in a multiple of 2, so it had like half the energy it should. And I was doing it, I could do 6 feet at 13 volts. Let me tell you, my Tesla coil only goes out like 20 inches at 10 volts. It's not very powerful like that. So I hit resonance and it was just amazing. So I have more update videos to come out on that.
Oh, I can't wait for that. That's cool.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I'm reading the comments at the same time.
Yeah, I was looking over to my screen too.
John Keeley, Curly says, I found out I already had the formula for fundamental resonance like 30 years ago, and I just didn't know that you had it. Well, that'd be interesting. If you put it up there, I'd be glad to test it. Yeah.
I know I've shown this before. I'm kind of interested to know what some of the properties of this is. It's a huge sapphire.
Wow.
Yeah, that I found. I'm just curious to know.
Okay,
lighting is awful. Yeah, look at that thing.
Yeah. Is there a lot of silica in that?
No, there's no silica in it. This thing is hard as a rock. No, a piece of quartz can't scratch it. Belong to a mineralogy club, and it's a large piece of corundum. It's kind of gemmy in some spots too. It's really nice. I found it, but it probably weighs like, I don't know, 5 pounds. Try to guess, probably around 5 pounds. It's that big.
It'd be interesting just to break a little section off and see what's inside.
I did. I cut it at the bottom.
Oh, okay.
The lighting is bad. I got the camera situation better than usual, but I don't know. Really can't see it all too much. It's like blue-gray, and it's somewhat transparent, like somewhat.
Dolomite? Someone was asking if it was dolomite.
No, it's not dolomite, but it's a piece of corundum. So I've heard before that scientists at MIT have been trying to, for a long time, figure out how to actually crystallize into dolomite formation, because dolomite is the potential like holy grail of material science. Okay, because it's a crystalline structure itself, and the way that it forms, it could form other crystals within it with almost absolute perfection. So, like no sorts of disorder, disarray. The crystals formed right within it, like totally formed. And they were saying that if they're able to manipulate the way that dolomite is formed, and then also grow other crystal formations within the dolomite specific to what the needs are, that material could then be used, as an exotic material. So they haven't figured that one out yet, though.
Okay, so hold on real quick. John put in here F equals 29.85 times H over D times 0.2 divided by N. Man, I'm going to need a breakdown of that a little better. What's the H? What's the D? What's the N? And what's the D? So if you got that, that'd be awesome. Then I could put it together. So is it height and distance? Is that what it is? And then what's the N? It's interesting. If that's the resonance frequency, man, I'm going to be putting that down. I'll write it down and see what it is. I could probably solve for N and see what it is. Let's see. Nodes? Maybe. Frequency? That's what the frequency.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know more about that too.
Height to diameter. Okay, I can go with
that's something
that.
we've touched on before too, about when finding something's resonant frequency is the geometry of the coil. We've definitely talked about that.
Yeah, it's
the ratios.
Well, I usually put a 20K ohm resistor on it and run it through the frequency generator, and then see where the amplification points are, because there's going to be several of them, and then I'll write those down, or I'll memorize them, whichever comes first, and then I'll know exactly where to put that little clip at.
Yeah. Yeah, with that equation, I'm just I'm looking at the 29.85 and just seeing if I could connect the dots to something else that is relevant to 2985, but not off the top of my head.
Yeah, it does look familiar, doesn't it? I can't place where it is.
Hey, Nathan, here's something that I've never seen anybody try. You know your toroid coil that you have?
The which one?
Your toroid coil, your rodent coil?
Yeah.
What would happen if you installed it on top of the Tesla coil and added it to the circuit?
What would happen? It would you mean like attach it to the number 2 coil?
Well, yeah, to the number 2 coil, but set it right on top.
What, setting it on top? You're looking for the vortex effect? Is that what it is?
Maybe, yeah. If you were to put like an insulator around the top rim of your Tesla coil, and then set the rodent coil right on top of that dielectric sponge or whatever separator, and see what you would get.
Let's give that a try.
That's an interesting idea. I just thought of that.
Yeah, I think the vortexes might be the interesting part of it. And the value, if you put a rod down, it would change between the Tesla coil and that. But would they get a beat frequency going and change it, because when I put my gravity flyer on there and it has its own frequency and I put it back to my Tesla coil, it gets a beat frequency of the two, but it's not in kilohertz, it's in megahertz. So could the rodent coil do the same thing? That would be interesting.
Yeah. Just make sure you put a good dielectric separator so the rodent coil's not actually touching the actual Tesla coil.
Yeah. Well,
Set it
also
on
another
Sorry,
experiment to that, based on what Gerald was doing, if I simply put the hot to the A channel and I put the cold to the B channel, would I start forming something in the center? And then if I have it in water, it'll probably vortex pretty easily in the water at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that might be a whole run of experiments right there. You may be seeing my coil floating in water.
Yeah, I think the rodent coil will actually cause a spin inside the Tesla coil. Like you said, you put the rod right down the center of it. What will happen?
I think you're right. I think I could get a better. Well, is it going to have to be in the same direction as the original coil, though? So if the Tesla coil winds right, is it going to have to make sure the rodent coil is winding the same way?
Right. That you have to figure out.
Because otherwise it's going to be deconstructive, and it's probably just cause problems.
You don't know. You have to try it, right? That's all part of experimentation.
Yeah, by the way, thank you, John. You clarified everything. Sorry, guys. I was just saying thank you, John, for clarifying everything. I really do appreciate that. And thank you for the formula. I'm going to try that out. But I'm going to start building a few more Tesla coils to make them resonate to each other. So I'll run the numbers and see what it actually does. If it does, man, it'd be an awesome way to construct all my coils. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut everybody off.
Well, all good.
Yeah, because you know what? I could, because Evo does something like that with his pulse coil, but I think it goes the same way. But he also has the pancake coils, so I might also try the pancake coil on it, because I know I could set my Tesla coil on top of the pancake coil and pick up energy all day long. So I wonder if it's robbing the energy or just taking the free part that comes out of it. That'd be an interesting thing too. There's a lot more there with all these different coil configurations.
For sure. And the output, so to speak, of that you're harnessing from the different frequencies put in would be analogous to the wellness benefits of some of the crystals, if it's in resonant frequency with the native output of certain crystalline structures too, and in a controllable and more able to transfer. It would just be more present. So I mean, if there's any moral to this particular cast, maybe it's that.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you what, man, it's kind of interesting, that pancake coil. Like, I set it right under the rodent coil and I just get free energy all day long. Like, literally, it doesn't affect the system and it just pulls out extra energy from the rodent coil.
So the question is, when does Mike give the cell to the system to then put inside of like a transformer drum and then put it on the side of your house and just go? Like,
yeah.
I the more that I've been kind of engaging in this, and the more time that passes, the more stuff I've been seeing, I'm failing to see the barrier. To be honest, like, is there a barrier at this point? Like, you educate me. That's not my specialty, because I don't know. I don't see the barrier.
I don't think there is a barrier. I think it's just it all boils down to the construction, knowing the elements and how they react with each other, and if it's able to act like a diode. Like, that's more and more I look at the cell as like a diode. And if you have the right condition in the differential from the positive to negative, and it has a source of ionic flow, meaning sacrificial cathode, then it's going to flow and you're going to get charge. So, like, I've spent 2.5 years developing this, so it's getting better and better and better, and I'm learning my material side. I've done my homework on this stuff. I've watched so many lectures on battery technology and all the material sciences and what's happening at the nanoscale. It's like I've done a university course, right? So, it's just getting better and better. I think it all boils down to material science in the end.
I mean, sort of what I'm seeing in my head for like a practical use in like the same context, right? Like, what if you take the coil setup that's going on, and you basically put it on top of packed earth, like wet packed earth, inside of a can, right? And then you drive a stake down into that earth, the conductive stake, and then you have sticking out of that conductive stake a thin wire with an insulator on it, the same as you would get the cold energy from the Tesla coil. And then from there you have a positive and a negative, and it turns into a battery, like where you would be able to take the cold energy right out of the frigging wet soil from just coming out the bottom of a can.
Right, exactly. Like, this goes back to my lecture I did with Nathan Stubblefield. He was using a lot of iron in his earth batteries. And I dug a little deeper, and it turned out the soil that he had on his farm was pretty acidic. So that also helped his earth battery in many ways. So
oh my God.
Sorry?
Go ahead. I got something when you're done.
Okay. Yeah, so a more acidic soil will definitely help if you're designing an earth battery. And, the cell I'm working on right now, it can work as an earth battery. You just have to change the case, right? So there's so many different directions you can go with this. I'm going with the power cell because I have all the things I want to do with power cell technology. There's a lot of guys working on the earth battery, but if you really want to get grounds on where it all started, start looking into Nathan Stubblefield. It's a good starting point.
Just feels like neutral entropy amplification coil earth cell that then relies on a secondary cell or two secondary cells for a loop, and then for storage, it's basically like a 3-shot thing. I don't know.
So check this out. In an experiment, I took cold energy and ran a second Tesla coil with the primary resonating, which turned the secondary to a resonating frequency. Because we can deal with the center of the core and put whatever we want down it, right? Well, when I put a bigger value thing down there, I can produce heat. So if I put a huge rod in there, then I can produce a lot of heat. Now I can convert back from cold to hot. And as soon as I convert, see now, Mike takes his power cell, takes his Renegade device, runs it into my air core transformer, which is the Tesla coil. Now I can convert it into hot energy without any loss whatsoever.
There you go.
Just like Gerald told me, he said you just got to move the heat from the outside to the inside, or vice versa, and you control the system, which means I would have total control. If I set up 2 Tesla coils, I can have complete control of whatever I want to do. That's awesome. Wow.
This is why we have these conversations.
That's so amazing.
Got to blow the walls off of it sometimes, man.
Wow. That's huge, man. If that works out, man, then we got it. We got anything that you wanted, a system you could put in your house. That's it. That's a done deal.
Right. Yin and yang, man. That's why there's got to be 2.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now I got something to try later. I'm gonna be messing around in my garage all tomorrow about that.
Oh man, I love this stuff.
All right, Mike, we're going on tonight with you. It's 2.5 hours. We're about done here. So,
Yep.
Go ahead.
Good, yeah. Just tune into my YouTube channel at Faraday Research, and just click on the live tab on the homepage, and you can set up a notification. The show's already posted, so you can just click on your notification, and I'll give you a signal as soon as we start the show, and you can log in and watch us inventors go at it.
Yeah, you know what? As a matter of fact, let me pull up your. I just got to put a link for it. Well, let me. There we go, and find it.
Hey, Mike, are you going to be on with Phil?
Well, Phil just got back from Texas.
Yeah, I know that. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, I'm going to send him an invite. Hopefully, he will be able to join us. I'm not sure. I haven't talked to him today yet.
Okay.
But I'll send him a message in a little while on WhatsApp and see if he's going to be around and if he's got time.
Okay.
To hop on.
The reason I was asking is because I know Lulu was on last night saying that she had met with him down there. She was kind of talking about that convention a little bit, and I was just wondering if he had any footage or any interesting conversations.
He might, and if he comes on tonight, maybe he might even share it with us. I don't know. I have to send him a message and see if he'll join us.
All right. Either way.
I'm in Toronto. He's out in Montreal, so we're not that far apart. So, yeah.
Right on.
Nice.
I put the link in the description, by the way, for tonight, guys, in case you want to save that link and put the notification on.
Awesome. Thank you.
So it looks like I'll be busy later tonight, hanging out with Mike, and we'll see what's going on. Joe, thank you for everything today, man. We had a great show.
Great show, man, as always.
Yeah, I want you to come on my show too. Maybe you can send me your email or whatever.
I'll get it over to you.
Cool.
Yeah, for sure. Anytime you ever want to have me on, then I'm usually around. I'm usually watching.
All right. Awesome.
Cool. By the way, I'm going to give that, John, just so you know, I'm going to talk to Sean about that formula. And I bet you he knows more than I do about it. But I'll definitely show it to him.
Has Victor gotten up and running yet? Again? I haven't seen him on in a while.
No, I haven't. I'm going to have to send him another email because I miss Victor.
Yeah, see how he's doing. And he would almost definitely have an idea about that. And if nothing else, he'll look at at least that, what is it, 298 number, and, then look at 0.2, and he would probably know the correlation right off of those two things,
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, man. If Victor told me he needed a hard drive for his computer, I'd send him one. Whatever it took to get him back up and going, man, absolutely. Victor's awesome.
Yeah, he's good people.
So, Anyway, guys, with that said, thank you very much. And I just want to say one more time to Tim, thank you for becoming a new member on my channel. I really do appreciate it. And with that said, guys, thank you very much and have a great night.
Peace and love.
Take care.